Hey everyone, this is Kevin from thechesswebsite.com, and today we're continuing our coverage of the 2020 U.S. Chess Championships being held remotely. So wherever these individuals want to play from. Day one yesterday was exciting. They played 3 rounds. Sitting at top of the leaderboard is Wesley So. He won all 3 of his games. He's going to be playing the black pieces today. I thought what better way to kick off today than watch him play in round 4. So he's going to be playing the black pieces. His opponent, Sam Shankland, playing the white pieces. He had 2 draws and a loss yesterday. So looking to get his first victory here with the white pieces. But these are teammates from the Chess Olympiad, know each other extremely well. So let's go ahead and get into the action. Sam starts with d4, knight f6, c4, e6, and then after knight c3 we get into the Nimzo Indian defense. We don't see this all too often, so it is always nice when we do get to. Most of the time white doesn't like playing this because it gives so many chances for black. The bishop can take here on c3, double up the pawns on the c file, just something white usually doesn't want to play. And then Sam continues with f3. Now, the main line is e3. So maybe he was okay with this because he had some additional preparation going into it. I wasn't sure with 25 minutes on the clock that each player has if Wesley So would be as prepared. Obviously, Wesley So a much higher rated player. So sometimes you have to think outside the box against those type of players. So f3 is the play here. And then after d5, you can continue down the path of e3, which is more the main line, but secondary is to play a3. And then after the bishop takes, which common theme in the Nimzo Indian is after the pawn takes here, then pawn c5, pawn takes on d5, knight takes on d5, putting a lot of pressure on the c3 square, which is undefended, as well as the pawn here on d4, almost forcing white to play pawn takes here on c5, and then after queen to a5, putting pressure both from the queen and the knight here on c3, we see the move e4. And I think this is an interesting spot for a lot of people because you have this square here on c3. It's not defended at all. You have 2 pieces that can attack this. You have the immediate check here with queen takes here on c3. So who cares about my knight being attacked? But you can also just take with your knight here on c3. It's defended by the queen here. This is attacking the queen here on d1. As soon as it moves, it's a discovered attack. But actually, this would be a bad move. Knight takes here on c3. Then you see queen to d2. Now the knight's pinned down to the queen. It can take it as soon as the bishop comes here to b2 on the next move. So you could see knight to c6 here, bishop to b2. Now the knight can move, and only because it was pinned, but the knight here on c6 is defending the queen. But now after the queen takes, the knight takes here, bishop takes here on g7. The rook moves. Bishop back here to f6, and you can see both the knights here on the a file, not exactly where they want to be. You have whites with a much better setup here, up in material here. All in all, not a spot that Wesley So wants to be in. Even if he takes with his queen, doesn't have to take with his knight for it to be a mistake. It would still be bad if he takes with his queen here on c3, because bishop to d2, queen is forced to move here. If he takes on c5, that's even worse, because you may look and say, okay, where does the queen move here? But queen to c5 loses to rook to c1, and there's the queen pretty much has to fall. You could come back here to c7, which doesn't, but you could just take here on c1 and just give up the queen. But if you move something like d6 as an example, you can see already rook takes here on c8, and then do you want to give up your queen now, or do you just want to move your king and just give up more material? Either way, it's going to lose. You could also try queen to e5. That's another way to escape here. But then white's just going to continue to attack. And so you could play knight to e2, setting up bishop to c3 here. The knight's under attack from the pawn on e4, so it comes back to e7. Black's definitely in a retreat mode, bishop to c3. Black can't get anything going on while white's just continue to push up the board here. And this is a lot of pressure that Wesley So does not want to be under. So in this position right here, Wesley So correctly, which I think a lot of people would incorrectly play, but he plays knight to e7. Now bishop to e3, castle on the king side, queen to b3, and then the queen comes back here to c7. Now usually what happens in the Nimzo Indian is that white is up material. And you can see right here that white has 7 pawns to the 6 pawns of black, but there is the double isolated pawns here on the c file. It's going to be very difficult for black to hold, or for white to hold on to both of these. And so eventually black is usually able to capture that material, and then black should have a good endgame. Now we see bishop to b5, just get involved into the action, wants to get the knight out so he can castle on the king side if he wants to. Doesn't have to castle for sure, but knight to e2 here, bishop to e6, just moving the pawn up to e5 so the bishop can come to the center of the board and attack the queen. Instead of moving the queen, decides to just push up forward here with c4. Knight to c6, knight here to c3, knight to a5. It could always take here, but it doesn't really do too much because then the knight's just going to take here. It's exactly the position that black has, but all of a sudden white doesn't have the bishop pair. That is the one thing that white has going for him, and so Sam needs to take advantage of that at some point. He needs to open up the board, really use that bishop pair. So decides to play knight to c3, knight to a5, attacking the queen, and then queen to b4. Knight to c6, putting more pressure on the queen. And then what I think is kind of the first move that kind of had my head scratching is this queen to a4. It almost feels like the queen is trapping itself. Could have just come back to b2. Can't come to b3 because it's attacked by the knight here. But b2 makes a lot of sense. Still on this dark square diagonal, protecting the knight right here. Still protecting the bishop. Has the pawn and the queen defending that. But queen to a4, and then Wesley So starts to attack here with pawn to a6. And then the bishop takes here. We do see the knight take on c4. So maybe he thought the knight would come back here and take on c6, but takes here on c4. Bishop takes on b7, and then knight to e3. And then after the bishop takes, then we see queen to c5. Now, knight to d5, and at this spot, Wesley So has gone up a ton of material. If you're watching these games, I usually watch on Chess24, but they will go through some of the variations that each player can play, and then they'll give a score. And in this position, it said Wesley So would play knight to c2, and he would be -4, which means black is up 4 points in material, which is extremely massive. And so we're just kind of waiting for Wesley to do that because it seemed like he had calculated all of this from 5 or 6 moves ago. And he took a long time and eventually played knight takes here on g2, which is definitely surprising because that pretty much put it at equal odds for both players. So Sam pretty quickly then played king to f1 as things are back to normal here. A lot of the threat is gone. So knight comes back to f4, queen up here to c6, queen to a5. And then after things have gone extremely well for white, has a chance to get back in it, he makes the fatal mistake and plays rook to d1, because I just don't think he really calculated. He's eyeing up here this d5 square, which makes a lot of sense. Bishop takes here on d5, pawn takes here on d5. What I don't think he realized is that black was no longer going to attack this square here on d5. Instead, Wesley So was going to play queen to a3, attacking the square here on f3. And you can see that's not going to go well at all. That's going to end in a very quick checkmate. So Sam really has to protect the pawn. The only way to do that is to play d6. That's exactly what he does. But then queen to b2, and now the threat is the queen coming over here to g2. And there's no way to really stop that. So yeah, you can bring your queen down here to e4. That's fine. But queen g2, king over here e1. You're going to lose your rook here on h1. Check, king to d2. You can see stuff starting to fall apart here, gobbling up material. Queen takes here on h2. Then all of a sudden you have Wesley So, one of the best players in the world, with an active queen, a knight here on an outpost that can start to get involved into the action, a rook here that anytime could take the bishop on a8, but it can also swing into the action, start to attack the king here. Things are not going to go well with an exposed king like this. Knight to e2 getting involved, check. All of a sudden, knight to d4, still a great outpost here for the knight. d7, sure, pushing up, but you're never going to have a chance to do anything with the promotion there. Queen to a2, and then a couple moves later, we do have the end of the game. And the simulations were running, and it was showing that this was going to be mate in not too many moves, 8 or 9 moves, depending on where white ends up going. So at the end, Sam does decide to resign. Wesley So wins. Not only did he win round 4, ended up winning round 5 as well. Now, did draw game number 6. It almost seemed like he was going to go back-to-back days winning every single game, but he sits atop of the leaderboard with 5.5 points out of a total of 6. So definitely seems like he is steamrolling the competition here. So we'll see if he can continue, but congratulations to him on a great win. Always nice when you're playing the black pieces, and even when you make a big mistake, you can still come back and get the victory. That's exactly what he did. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you're enjoying the series as well. And I'll see you tomorrow for a game from round 7, 8, or 9. Thanks for watching. Bye.